Hola, familia! Today's episode is a little different and very special to me. I'm going to be sitting down with someone who has been deeply influential in my own spiritual journey, especially in the very beginning of my relationship with magic, before I had a language for it, before it became what I practice today. I'm joined by Aspen. She's someone I admire deeply for her wisdom, lived experiences, strength, and the way she's learned to move forward even when fear has been present. This isn't an interview, it's a conversation. Two brujas sharing tea, reflecting on fear, faith, community, and what it takes to trust your own path, especially when it goes against everything one has been taught. So, familia, grab some tecito and come join us today. Hola, familia, and welcome to another episode of Fire and Butterflies, where vulnerability meets authenticity, where courage meets love, and where fire meets butterflies. And as I mentioned in the introduction, today I'm joined by my very special guest, Aspen. And so I'd love for you guys to meet this amazing woman in my life. Aspen, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Crystal. My name is Aspen. I am a witch, and more specifically, I am a solitary eclectic Wiccan, and I have identified that way since about 2000.
Nice. Because I have listeners from all types of backgrounds, every different, not denomination, but just different ways of practicing. So tell us a little bit more of what you mean by an eclectic a witch.
So let me kind of like break down the three different parts. So solitary eclectic Wiccan. Wicca, you ask 10 Wiccans to give you a definition, you're going to get 10 different answers. So
That
the
you are.
generally accepted history of it is in the 1950s, Gerald Gardner, who is British, uh, uh, revealed a tradition that he had been trained in, called Wicca, and it was I would say a new form of an old religion.
Mhm,
So Wicca, there's British traditional witchcraft, Wiccan groups where you have to be initiated. There's inner mysteries. There's, they are closed and secretive traditions.
mhm,
And
mhm,
in the 80s, I think really with Scott Cunningham, and the books that he started publishing, there was a rise in people who were solitary Wiccan practitioners who were learning what they could through books and without an instructor, without being initiated into a specific tradition. And that's where the eclectic part comes in, because that tells people who are Gardnerian or Alexandrian or Dianic or any of those other initiated traditions. When I say eclectic, they know that I'm not initiated into a tradition. I am,
mhm,
I'm pulling things from different places and kind of pulling together what makes sense for me.
mhm,
And with
mhm,
solitary, it's that I'm not part of a coven. I'm a solitary practitioner.
mhm, mhm,
So Wicca basically, it's a religion. So I would say all Wiccans are witches, because witchcraft, my definition of witchcraft is it defines what you do. It's a
mhm.
practice. And some
Absolutely.
witches do that as part of a religion and some witches don't.
Mhm,
So I would say all Wiccans are witches, because all Wiccans tend to have some type of witchcraft as part of their practice, but
mhm,
clearly not all witches are Wiccan.
mhm,
So
mhm,
Wicca kind of it honors, in general, it honors both a god and a goddess. It follows the eight Sabbats, the wheel of the year. It's
mhm,
a
mhm.
which is a new construct, a modern construct. And it's really very much connecting with the earth and being in tune with it.
No, I love that. Thank you so much for giving a little bit more explanation on that too. And for a lot of listeners who are wondering, well, why is Aspen on the show? Where's this coming from? It's very important to me because for a lot of people who know me personally or don't know me, Aspen has been a huge part of my own journey, as I mentioned before. And that's one of the things that I have, and you know this because I've mentioned it to you, but it's one of my things that I love and admire about you is that you pull what works for you. And that was my inspiration of my own journey of like, oh, I could pull a little bit of here, I could pull a little bit of that. And so you get to make it your own. And I love that that's how you also had your journey. So with that being said, I'm curious, when you think about the beginning of your relationship with magic, when did you really feel like it began for you?
So I feel like I have always had a relationship with magic. It's just that before I embraced paganism, it was a relationship rooted in fear.
Mm,
So growing up, I grew up in a very Christian household. My mother was Episcopalian, which is Catholic light for people who aren't familiar with it. It's very
uh-huh.
similar to Catholicism in the ritual and, all of the things. But Episcopal my experience with the Episcopal Church is it's a little more bureaucratic, whereas the Catholic Church is a little more fire and brimstone. So I went to Catholic school.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, so I went to Catholic school, a convent, run Catholic school from kindergarten through eighth grade. So I had daily religious instruction and indoctrination and mass one or two times a week at school, and then come home. And my mom was from a family of priests and nuns and missionaries. The church was very much entwined with our family going back generations. She had a master's in Christian education. So it was very steeped in Christianity. And I was always very fascinated with magic, the occult, the supernatural, anything like that. I was fascinated with it and terrified of it
Yeah.
because the stories that I always had was anytime anything, first off, demonic possession was real. It was a real thing. And anyone who experienced it, it was their own fault. There was something that they did that invited that spirit in. Amityville horror was like a big thing, that I was a kid in the 70s, a teenager in the 80s. Amityville horror, that story broke in the late 70s. So it was really
Yeah.
big, like in the backdrop. And what I knew about it was that the Lutzes were practicing transcendental meditation, and that's what opened the door to allow a demon
Mm,
to attach to them. Now, I didn't know what transcendental meditation was, you know. I know what it is now, and it's pretty harmless. But that was the thing then. Then if you were rooted in the church, you were protected. If you went
mm-hmm.
outside of it, you weren't. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had this like push pull of being fascinated and terrified at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
what happened over time was by the time I was graduating high school, I would say I was really starting to leave the church behind because of just all the contradictions. And I went through this phase of, I believe in God. I don't have a problem with Christianity. I have a problem with church. So sure, I'm Christian, but I just have a problem with church and the way things twist it. But the longer I was away from it and the more I was surrounded by people who were not Christian, and I was able to kind of look at the teachings from that distance, it was like, no, I really think I do have a problem with Christianity. I really think it's unhealthy. I really think it's, um, I think I don't just have a problem with what man has done with it. I have a problem with some of the base teachings. So this
Mm-hmm.
is not
Mm-hmm.
something that I can embrace or accept. And that left like this big hole because the church had been so much a part of my life. So then I had this hole for a while and and wanting to fill it, but not sure with what, and still afraid of anything that wasn't Christian. That whole like, what if it's true? Those billboards. What if it's
Mm-hmm.
true? What if I do something else and then I wind up going to hell? And so I was too afraid to do anything else. I was like
Yeah.
stuck
Yeah.
in this place of fear. And then I wound up being surrounded by people who were where paganism was okay. Either they were already on a path of their own, or they did not have that kind of fear reaction. They were like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you do, you sort of a thing. and
Mm-hmm.
and through that kind of started to pick up on some different things. So there was a gradual shift. There wasn't this
Mm-hmm.
moment of, aha, this is it. But it was a gradual shift of, okay, I think that this is a path I want to do. And so then what kind of path? So then I had to
Mm-hmm.
research different types of neo-paganism and figure out what felt right, and Wicca was the one that
Mm-hmm.
felt right. And the only
Mm-hmm.
way to do that was a solitary. There were no, you can't just Google Wicca coven to join. Well, maybe you can now, but you couldn't then.
No, I
Um,
think you can now.
yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
if you didn't know someone that was part of a
Mm-hmm.
coven that could pull you in and where you could initiate, it's like, your only choice was to do it on your own.
Yeah.
So that gradual shift happened, and that's part of the name Aspen. It's my craft name. It's the name that I
Mm-hmm.
use when I'm in pagan spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And early on in my research, I read that sometimes people pick craft names that kind of remind them of who they are and who they want to be and what their values are. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so I was looking through some different books on different names and the meanings. And one of the meanings of Aspen was moving forward in the face of fear.
I love
And,
that.
it's everything that I do, even now, is a constant battle against that Christian record running in my head. And and that's why I chose that as my name, because it is moving forward in the face of fear.
I love that. I love that. And there's a lot you spoke into about the religious trauma, the upbringing, and I'm curious if you also had a lot of pullback from your family. Or did you ever come out to your family?
I did. My father died when I was 21. So by the
Mm-hmm.
time I was doing this, I was, it was 1999, 2000. So I was close to 30.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he wasn't really the religious person anyway. My father was
Mm-hmm.
was Latino and he was Roman Catholic, but it was like a
Hmm.
Christmas Easter kind of Catholic,
Yeah.
and I mean, there were some like cultural things that he did, but it wasn't it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't rude, it wasn't a part of his life. For my mom, it was very different. I mean, she defined first and foremost as Christian, and that came before
Mm-hmm.
everything else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So for her, yeah, for a long time there was, if she was going to come over, I would hide all the pagan books and take down all the things. And I was telling one of my friends who was LGBTQ, she was like, "Wow, that's what I was like before I came out to my mom." It's like
Yeah.
they're going to
Yeah.
come over, it's like hiding all the pictures and doing all this stuff. So, because I knew what it would mean to her, what it would mean to her when I told her that I had rejected Christianity, and of course she knew I didn't go to church, but
Mm-hmm.
she thought I still, was like, oh yeah, I'm Christian. I just have a problem with church.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I knew that what it would mean to her was that we would be parted forever.
Mm-hmm.
Because for
Mm-hmm.
her, when she died, she knew she was going to go to heaven, but you only go to heaven if you're Christian. So if I
Mm-hmm.
was rejecting Christianity, I wasn't going to go to heaven, and that would mean eternal
Mm-hmm.
separation. And I
Mm-hmm.
knew how difficult that concept would be
Mm-hmm.
for her.
Mm-hmm.
So it finally got to the point where um, I remember I did tell her at one point, I was like, I have found something that feels, and there was something in general we were talking about around Christianity. Christianity was a source of lots of arguments, all for our whole relationship. And it was one of those things. She was bringing something up, and I was talking about the downsides, the harm that it's done in whatever context was. And I said, I have found something that is so important to me and so fills me and so, brings me joy. And I can't even talk with you about it because I don't know what your reaction is going to be. And she was like, well, what is it? And I said, I'm Wiccan. And she said, well, what's that? And I said, I'm a witch. And, her face was just like, and, my aunt, my mom's sister, knew a little more about Wicca, and my mom talked with her, and my aunt was like, it's very harmless. It's very gentle. It's not Satan worship. It's not any of that. But it's still for her. I mean, she was constantly trying to always pull me back and have me take communion. I mean, she believed if you didn't take communion, you would starve spiritually. So that was a constant thing, and and in a way for me, like strengthening my faith, because some of the questions that she asked me, I would have to think about the answer. And it also helped me reframe, like I said, the record when it goes in my head about, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this is dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
and she said, well, how do you know? She said, when you're praying to your God, how do you know that's really who's answering, and that it's not a demon in disguise? And I said, well, how do you?
Mm. Oh, I thought that one.
you
What'd she
know
say?
And she said, well, I just know. And I said, so do I. So, you know, that stopped that conversation. So, but
I
it, but it
love
was
that.
it was moments like that that really did have to, number one, help me think, really kind of think and figure out
Mm-hmm.
what is my
Mm-hmm.
framework and what is safe, and because I don't want to make it sound like, I think that everything in the magical world is safe. I don't. I think there's danger there, just like there's danger in any organized religion and any belief
Absolutely.
system. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so you learn how to protect yourself, and you learn how to,
Mm-hmm.
figure out what feels true and what feels false,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and you go from there. So, but a lot of those conversations helped root me in that.
You've spoken a lot in regards to, your mom supporting. And when you came out, especially one breaking the, I'm going to call it as what it is, the generational trauma, because
Mm,
I mean, it was handed down from, I mean, your family was so, it has been so deep in religion. There is religious trauma there. You've expressed it. But I'm curious how that religious trauma, because as a bruja coach, with a lot of people I work with, religious trauma is always one of the biggest barriers that a lot of people have
hmm.
to overcome in order to really get into their magic, into
Yeah.
their that essence of them. So how did you do it? Like what helped you learn to trust yourself in your on your path, especially when you didn't have a path?
Right.
Um,
So the first thing I had to do was figure out what my path was. And even
mhm,
once I settled on Wicca, I mean there were so many different sources, you know. So I was doing at that time Witch's Voice was a big online it was a website, but it also was a networking hub
mhm,
for pagans and witches and in different, you know, so they were a huge learning tool. And Yahoo groups was a big thing at the time. So I was joining different groups to kind of figure out what are different belief systems and that sort of
mhm,
thing.
mhm,
And reading different authors, like asking who are the recommended authors and reading them. It's like, okay, this one they're like citing some stuff. So I think that this has got some historical background. This one is saying just, you know, close your eyes and you do you, which was not what was gonna work for me.
yeah.
I wanted to know that
Mhm,
what I was doing was rooted in some kind of
mhm,
history,
mhm, mhm,
as much as one can know. So I kind of had to like figure all that out first. And the religious trauma that you reference, for me, I think that's what I call the Christian record that's in my head. So I'll give you an example. At one point, once I embraced my path, I knew what I was doing, and then I had this thing of like I felt like I should be public about it. I felt like I shouldn't hide. I felt like I shouldn't um, be afraid of wearing a pentagram or whatever. And then I stopped and I was like, okay, where is that urge coming from? Because nowhere in the sacred texts that I've read, nowhere in the authors that I have you know, learned from and people I consider my mentors, none of them have said you need to go like spread the word and be out about who you are and be, you know, be an at public activist. I said, in fact, the opposite. You know,
mhm,
if you look at the and when I say sacred text, it's like it's some of the foundational poems. They are contemporary poems. They're not old, but they're like they hold some of the foundational beliefs. And it's really around looking at how has this survived, and it's about learning when to hide. You know, it's about
it's
learning when
survival.
to hide and when to be loud and doing what you need to do to survive, and that's how the traditions survive
Mhm,
in oppressive times. So it was
mhm,
actually the opposite, and then I realized, oh, it's the Christian record that's pushing me to do that.
mhm,
And
mhm,
there's a lot of times where I think that a lot of people who come to paganism from Christianity bring that with them without even realizing that's what they're doing. And I
mhm.
recognize it when I hear it. And I'm like, no, that's the Christian record, and that's not part of my path now, and that's not something I need to do, you know?
Yeah. No, no. And I hear what you're saying. Especially, everything you're sharing, I relate to it a lot, and I can imagine a lot of the listeners also relating to it because it's so ingrained
Yeah.
in us. And especially, because I do have listeners from other parts of the world. I'm always very curious how other parts of the world how they see it. But here in America, here in the United States, like it really is like Christianity is so ingrained. Me growing up Catholic, I know exactly what you're talking about of just because there's times I catch myself and I'm like, oh, that's not no, that's no.
Yes,
That comes
yes,
from my religious trauma right there.
yes.
Let's back up a little bit.
It's stopping to
Hmm.
think of, you know, so where is this coming from? I'll give you a perfect example. It was so I did a lot of like learning and reading and practicing exercises and doing different things before I actually did like a full-blown ritual. It was at least 6 months or a year of
Hmm.
studying things before I did my own full-blown
Hmm.
cast a circle, you know, invoke
Hmm.
deity, all of that ritual. And so the very first one that I did was asking for, it was on a Sabbath. I don't remember which one, but it was on a Sabbath. And it was asking for like clarity and spiritual growth and being able to be more aware of the things around me, you know, beyond the veil and that sort of thing. And then I closed it out, and then I'm walking around the house, and I was home alone. And I just had this sense I was being watched, like the hairs on the back of my neck go up, and wherever I go, I feel like something's watching me, something's there. And so there was immediate fear
Yep. I
of,
know.
oh
I
my
remember
God,
that
what have
feeling
I
too.
done? And you know, I've opened the door and Amityville Horror, and all of this. And I get on the computer and I go to the Yahoo groups because at that point that was my community.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
so I jumped and I was like, I need help. I'm not sure what I did and this and this and here's what happened. And someone said, congratulations, it worked. You've cast your first spell and it worked. So what is your problem? You know? And
So
then they
what's your
kind of
problem, Aspen?
talked me through it. They were like, so what do you, so just stop and what are you feeling? And so then I stopped and I tried to shut off the whole fear thing and really examine what was I feeling. And what I was
Mhm.
sensing was curiosity, an awareness, but nothing malignant, nothing
Mhm. Mhm.
harmful, nothing, the only sense of the only thing that caused fear was like what I was putting on it, because now that
Mhm.
I sense this thing that you can't see or whatever, it must be evil
Mhm. Mhm.
because of that record light coming on. And once I was able
Mhm.
to get that record to stop and try and experience what was happening without it, I was like, there's no there's no malintent here.
Mhm.
It's just curiosity.
Mhm. Mhm.
And wow, okay. So, it worked. There's something to this.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that rings bells to so like my first spell and when it worked, it scared me. I remember the first time I did my first one and it worked. I was like, "Oh my gosh." Like and the same. I grew up brujeria was a taboo. Like it was just you don't talk about it. Growing up for me Catholic, but Mexican Catholic. And I always think like there's a difference between um Catholic in
There is.
America and
Yeah,
Mexican
there
Catholic
is.
because
A lot more
in Mexico,
mysticism entwined.
yes, exactly, and it's rooted ancestral wise for me, especially because I've been doing a lot of ancestral work too. It's there's a lot of rootedness in, is that even a word, rootedness? It's rooted in the native culture and Catholicism. I mean, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and she's a perfect example. She is a Aztec goddess and also became a Catholic deity. So it's so interesting for me growing and learning, especially as I still am on my journey. Um, with you being on your journey for 20 plus years, I am curious though how you have seen it change and evolve. How has your relationship with magic changed over the time, or has it stayed mostly the same, just expressed differently?
So, in terms of my relationship with it, it's a constant learning and growing.
Mm-hmm.
And I have found that the times where the growing happens in bursts, and it happens in bursts when I find community. When I am by myself, it is difficult. Number one, the discipline is difficult,
Mm-hmm.
to because there in Wicca there's a tradition of practicing for a year and a day. So like you keep the Sabbats and the Esbats for a year and a day. And I've never been able to do it with the Esbats, but for the Sabbats, I would try and try and try, and I could not follow, having ritual every Sabbat for a full year. Something always broke it until I started inviting people over.
Mm-hmm.
And that commitment to, well, someone's coming over, I guess I better do something, you know.
The accountability's there.
Yeah, then yes, that and for the first time I was able to do a full year, without
Mm-hmm.
missing a Sabbath. And and then I would find different groups to work with. Never a coven. I've never been part of a coven, but I would find different groups of people that I could join with for a while to learn different things, to learn how to
Mm-hmm.
properly dress a candle, to learn the components of casting circle, to learn, taking all the stuff that I had read and then having someone help me through practical application.
Oh, I
So when I
love
have
that.
found those opportunities to do that is when my learning has just jumped forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And taken my confidence to a place where I feel comfortable doing tarot readings for people that I don't know. I have created and taught tarot workshops and also workshops on Futhark runes,
Hmm.
so that kind of confidence, and still knowing that I just know the hair of a fingernail of, everything that there is to know. There is something for, if I had the opportunity to be part of a initiated mystery tradition, I would definitely want that, just because of the intense one-on-one training and learning that you get.
Hmm.
But I don't have that opportunity. So, I go as far as I can on my own and with whatever opportunities the universe brings me.
No, absolutely. Well, and you said something, and I'm curious if you know. Have you ever felt like you're a mentor to people?
Um, in paganism, sometimes, but mostly I feel like I'm learning.
Well, I'm putting you on the spot. I've always seen you as one of my mentors.
Well, thank you for
And
that.
and especially because what you said, when the tarot class, and for fun fact for a lot of people who may not know, uh, Aspen was my one of my very first instructors, and I remember being in your class and learning how to read tarot, and it was like I don't know, for me it just took it to another level. And so I love when you saying, like, when you grow and being solidarity, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's something when it's group and community that really does
Yeah,
expand our our knowledge, expands our
yeah,
magic. And that's actually, it's been one of my
yeah,
favorite things, is when I can raise the vibration with community. It's I don't know, it's the magic just feels stronger. Like, you've invited me to circles, and I love going attending the circles in your space. And it's different. It hits differently when it's a group of us versus if it's just me at home doing my own ritual. And so I know what you mean about the growth spurts happening
mhm.
in community more than solidarity. But so I'm curious. Oh, we're probably gonna get a lot of hate from a lot of people. I don't care. What are your thoughts about social media playing a role on this? Because you talked about it being, you found your groups on Yahoo Groups. I don't even know if Yahoo Groups is still a thing
Oh, I
anymore.
don't, probably not.
Yeah, again, right? So, but now a lot, especially as a mentor of myself and trying to help people, I get a lot of people who say, "Oh, I saw this on TikTok, or I saw this on Instagram, or I saw this on YouTube." And I'm like, okay, but that doesn't mean it's true. Like, I don't like I have seen a lot of that. I'm curious if you have experienced that, especially as age is growing. I mean, AI is
Yeah,
becoming an issue, and I won't go down that path. That's a whole other, that's a whole other conversation. But I'm just
yeah.
curious if you've noticed a play on that too.
So first off, I'm not on TikTok. I'm on Facebook. So a
Hmm.
lot of this isn't stuff that I've experienced directly, but I hear a lot about it. Like I think there was a thing on TikTok where people were trying to hex the moon or some
Oh
stupid
my
thing like
gosh.
that. It was like, yeah, it's like TikTok challenge, hex the moon. Okay, fine, whatever. Um, I think that so I'm also going to answer this question specifically from my perspective, which will definitely be people out there who don't agree with that perspective. My perspective is, if you haven't put in the time and the training and the discipline to learn how to connect with energy, and then to learn how to move it, nothing you do is going to have any effect.
Hmm.
So
Mm.
if I c- print a spell off the internet and all I am doing is reading words, I may as well be reading a poem. It's not going to do anything because
Hmm.
I don't know how to manifest that in the real world. So,
Hmm.
people who want to hex the moon on TikTok, fine, howl at the moon all you want. It's not going to do anything. Um, but I think that, and I think it also depends on like where you are coming from. I think that a lot of people who are doing that, they are not looking for a religion. They are looking for spell work. Without that, for me, it's a religion. The
It
the
is.
spell
Yeah.
I am not Wiccan because I want to cast spells. I cast spells because I am Wiccan, and And what I learned was in Wicca that creating that sacred space, the world between worlds, doing ritual works is part of filling your cup as a Wiccan. So you
Mm-hmm.
can't really I mean, I could have a belief system without any practice, but to really feel connected to that belief system, you have to also have the practice. You have
Mm-hmm.
to create sacred space. You have to visit the world between worlds. You have to go to that well and continually
Mm-hmm.
fill up to be able to be connected.
Yeah. There is
So
no spiritual bypassing here.
yeah, so I think, and with neo-paganism, we I think as a group, we are so rejecting of traditional Orthodox religious structures that we kind of swing the pendulum the other way and say,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want to do is fine. Whatever you want to call yourself is fine. We're not going to tell you what to do. So that's created legitimacy for people who are like, I'm just gonna print this spell and hex the moon and look, I'm pagan now, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm a
Mm-hmm.
witch now. It's like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not really sure what you were asking or if I've answered the question.
No, no, you spoke into a lot, and I wanted to ask that question because um I do get a lot of people who are interested in realizing like, oh, I want to be a bruja too. I want to be a witch, or I want to connect with magic. But I don't think a lot of people realize it's more than it is. It's more than just going on YouTube or using
Yeah,
AI as help me create this spell. Like there's
yeah,
a lot of shadow work that needs to be done. There's a lot
yeah,
of one for me, there was a lot of deconditioning I had to do again with bringing it back to the religious trauma.
right.
So that's why I was asking you, like, what are your thoughts about how, because
And
as,
I do think that you have to learn how to protect yourself because
mm-hmm,
if you by some chance in reading your thing that you've printed off the internet actually do happen to make connection with something, I do still believe that you can be influenced by harmful um spirits if you don't figure out how to ground and center and protect yourself. And I think that those harmful spirits are part of any religion.
oh, absolutely. I mean, any spirituality, it's all energy, like you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier. If you don't know how to wield the energy, then it's like, what are we
Yeah.
doing?
So I think it can be dangerous in that I tell you, the TV show, was it called Ghost Hunters? The ones where they go into a place that they think is haunted and start throwing shade at the spirits, you
I
know?
get so angry at those
I'm like,
shows.
what are you doing?
Yeah,
And I would
yeah.
not be surprised if they leave with something attached to them because
Mm-hmm,
of what they're doing. So, and I think that some of the things that I hear about in terms of TikTok and social media and all of that are the same type of thing. So I
mm-hmm,
would be curious, like if someone's like, well, I want to be a bruja, I want to be a witch. My question would be why?
mm-hmm.
Why? What
I
what
love that.
what would what would it give you? And
Mm-hmm.
their answer to that for me would tell me whether or not I want to spend more time with them down that path.
Yeah, I love that. That is a really good question to just even just get their why. It's so funny when you said that, all I thought about is I just wanted peace. And I have no idea, like that was the first thing that came to mind. I just wanted peace.
Hmm.
Peace that wasn't created from my religious upbringing. I wanted to find that connection. So I'm glad that you asked that. It's a good question to ask. So in regards to spell work, what is now that you've been on this journey for as long as you have, when do you feel like you lean more on your spell work more versus just leaning on the belief of energy, if that makes sense? Or do I need to rephrase that?
Well, to me they aren't different.
Mm-hmm.
So spell work is how I pray.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So for someone else, they know someone who's sick, and they might go to church and pray for them, or depending on the tradition,
Mm-hmm.
like light a
Mm-hmm.
candle and spending time and energy that way of
Yes.
asking that someone to be well. For me, I do a healing spell candle.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's casting a spell, and that is
Mm-hmm.
my prayer
Mm-hmm.
as I do
Mm-hmm.
it. So I can't really separate, and that's part of what I was saying around if you're Wiccan, you're a witch, because
Mm-hmm.
that spell work and energy manifestation and all of that is entwined with
Mm-hmm.
who you are and your belief system.
Hmm. So, have you ever, I guess the question I'm trying to come across is, have you ever found yourself not needing to do the actual ritual itself and still being able to cast a spell and you not knowingly? Like, for example, and I think I've told you this about the time that I brought in Nettie Lynn into my life, and I didn't do a magic spell. I didn't do anything. All
Yeah.
I said was out loud, I need a black female cat in my life to represent Lynette. And the next thing I know, there's a black female cat in my door. So like that kind of stuff. Like, wait, because I think that is where a lot of people first get introduced to magic is that
Uh-huh.
moment of, the again going back to social media, because that's where I've seen a lot of the rise. I've been practicing for almost 10 years now, and I've seen a rise mostly coming from that manifestation,
Yeah.
mentality of like, oh, you got to speak it into the universe and it'll happen. And I agree with. I'm not one that disagrees with that, but I'm learning. I'm like, oh, like there's more to it than just speaking into the universe. So I'm curious. That's where I'm
So
the
so
question's coming from.
here's how that shows up for me. I think this is what you're talking about. I have found that when I am holding the Sabbats, when I am connect, it's part of why, I mean, I'm on a break from work, and it's part of why, as part of that, I really wanted to focus on spirituality because I was starting to feel disconnected from it again because
Hmm.
hadn't been spending a lot of time in things. When I am connected, I feel like I am flowing with a current,
Yes.
and that makes more opportunities come my way. I am more able to recognize them when they show up. It doesn't feel like I'm fighting as hard against things. When I am distanced from my spiritual practice, things start to feel harder, and I'm not
Hmm.
as flexible, and I can't flow as well when stressful things happen. I can't, like, kind of like rise above the individual crisis that's happening now and look at
Hmm.
the learning or growing moment in it, whereas I can when I am rooted in my spirituality. Things just are easier
Hmm.
when I am connected. And when I start to drift away from it, things get harder.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's how it feels like for me as well. So I'm glad to hear that it's it's very similar experience for many people. And I think a lot of listeners need to remind themselves of this, because I've had people come back and say, my spell's not working. It's like, well, where are you at emotionally? Where are you at physically? Where are you at mentally?
What
Because
else
I
have you
also,
done?
yeah,
You
exactly.
know, I
What
mean,
what else have you done?
for magic, it really is a thing of, look, deity is not going to work harder than you are. So, yes, in terms of going back to the healing thing, yes, I do a candle and go to the doctor and take the medicine and, follow their. I mean, it's not, if all you are doing is spell work and nothing else, yeah, nothing's going to happen. You have to figure out, it has to be part of your plan, not your whole plan.
Hmm. Hmm. Think has to be part of your plan, not the whole plan. I love that. I love that. Well, before looking at the time, and again, I want to respect that people's ears because attention spans are less and less nowadays. So before closing, I do want to just give you an opportunity. If someone is listening and is quietly curious about their own magic, what would you want them to feel or remember?
So I would say, I think the important things are like when I was talking about the record, like listen to the messages and really pay attention to where they're coming from. The messages that aren't coming from you, or your connection, like the Christian record, like I was talking about. Try to turn that off, try to not pull that in, and really think about, what am I connecting with here? And does it feel something that fills me? Does it feel something that is good for me? Does it feel something that is aligned with me? And if it is, trust that, trust that is the path for you, and look for the opportunities when they come, because the universe will give you lots of different opportunities, sometimes pounding you over the head with them. So, but you have to be willing to step into them. So don't be afraid to step into the possibilities.
Oh, I love that message. Thank you, Aspen. Thank you so much for this. And thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing a little bit of your journey and where you've been, where you're going, and the changes in the middle of all of that. Because, oh
No, thank you
man,
for the opportunity. I enjoyed it.
Thank you all for the listeners who are also here. And with all of that, I am sending you all so much fire and butterflies. And don't forget to love your now. Bye.